fellow travelers. Thank you for joining me again on the Unbroken Ground. This is episode 43, the one about a girl. So if you've been listening to the past couple of episodes, I've been kind of recounting how God has taken me through life and all the different turns that I've taken. This is going to be about when I met my wife. So if you've been looking forward to that, or if you've been hoping I'd talk about that, or if you're just showing up for the first time, that's what this one's going to be about. And so I'm going to jump into that. I will say you might be a little bit lost if you don't listen to episodes 41 and 42, because I talk a lot about how I got to where I got. And this one I'm just going to talk a little bit. I'm not going to go into some deep back history, but a little bit of history, and then just kind of tell the story of how I met my wife. And then I got married. So don't forget, there's a lot of people that have been listening lately, which is pretty cool. Thanks to a couple of different friends coming on, including Travis and Olivia. So if you are new to the podcast and you are listening, thank you, welcome. This one does not have those guys on it, but we are going to work out on something, hopefully create something going for them moving forward and helping out of that. But also, you can also find out updates about my podcast at The Unbroken Ground Facebook / The Unbroken Ground. You can follow that for updates and all that kind of stuff on also articles that I write, but you can also email me at theunbrokenground@gmail.com, or you can find me on Instagram at The Unbroken Ground. So let's take it off. We're gonna go for it. We're gonna talk about how I met my wife. So yeah, if you've been following along, you realize we left off. I just had a summer in Colorado. I went to help out with my friend Jonathan in Indianapolis, and it didn't work out. I didn't really know what the plan was. That's kind of sometimes how God directs me. God takes me in a direction and I follow in that direction, and then sometimes God says, nope, that was not, you're here, you've been here. And I think it was in Indianapolis like 3 or 4 weeks. So yeah, it wasn't like a ton of time before things just got really dicey for relationship wise for the church that my friend was in. That situation worked out. He did stay there and was able to minister for another year. Things didn't change that much for him, but God just kind of used that to be like, all right, you're headed back home. And so, or at least back to Texas. So I headed back to Texas from Indianapolis, drove back, and moved into my sister's house for about a month and started looking for a job. And I went through a lot of crazy job application places, but eventually I ended up selling digital cameras for Walmart. And from there, I decided that I definitely, as I was working at Walmart, I knew that God was calling me to go back to seminary. David and Rosie asked if I would come back out to Colorado. And so, I went out and had another summer in Colorado. It was different, as things often are, the second time around. It was still really good. Still one of my favorite summers. Pales in comparison to the first one. There were some different things that we did. Of course, it was a different crew. I was one of the few returners, actually the only returner, and my other friends came for a partial part of the summer, but I was the only one working for the full time over the summer. And I ended up doing a lot of youth ministry, actually, because the person that had been hired to be the summer youth intern for the Baptist Church got fired 2 weeks into that gig after we went to summer camp, and he behaved poorly. Nothing really too bad. He just it was just a weird kind of off kind of thing. He just didn't follow some of the rules, and we were serving ice cream one night, and instead of waiting in line, he crawled through a window. Just goofy, really. And that got back to the people who he was representing in Lake City, and they did not appreciate that at all. And so they fired them, and me and my friend Mark, who was also from Angelo State, we we although at this time I think he was at seminary, but either way, we we started we kind of stepped in and did youth ministry for the summer, along with the bed and breakfast, the cleaning, and the cooking and those type of things. But it was a different summer, and it was great. It wasn't the same kind of impact that I experienced from the first summer, but yeah, it was very good. Either way. Throughout all that, I decided I wanted to go back to school, and that meant going to seminary. And my friend Brian, who I met in the town that I moved to in the second grade, we actually were born on the same day, born in the same hospital even, but didn't know each other until the second grade. And he was one of the guys that I back when I thought I was going to go to Hardin Simmons. He's one that did. And he went all the way through. He was at seminary there, and so I had contacted him and just kind of asked him about seminary and what he liked about being at Logston there and on the Hardin Simmons campus. And he's like, "Hey, come out and see." And so I did. I visited. I put in my application. So before I left, I got accepted to go to seminary. And yeah, in August, August of 2005. Is that right? August of 2004. I don't remember. One of those, 2005, 2000. I think it was actually 2005. August 2005. I showed up at a seminary for my introductions, and on the very first day, we had just kind of a welcome to seminary thing at the chapel. We were assigned to hang out with an advisor, a professor, and I was assigned to. Now, I did know somebody. This was different than even my going to Angelo State. I did know somebody. I actually knew a couple of people that were in seminary. One of my friends who was a youth minister in the area, he was going to seminary there, and then another friend who I knew from Angelo State was going to seminary there. So I knew a couple of people. Actually, I think he was doing graduate school. I don't think he was doing seminary. But either way, I knew some people. But on the first day, assigned to a professor, and it was me and another student. And that student happened to be my wife. Not at the time. I didn't know her. So that professor took us to coffee. That was my first time meeting my wife. He took us to coffee. She talked a lot. I didn't talk very much. I at the time was trying to figure out my living situation because I had applied for living on the dorm or on campus, and they had put me in a freshman dorm, and I was like, no, I don't think so. I don't think me as a 24, 25-year-old was particularly interested in 2005, August 2005, particularly interested in staying with a bunch of 18-year-olds. I could have done it, but didn't want to, and so they actually put me in the shutdown wing of a girls' dorm, and so me and another couple of guys stayed on the third floor of this dorm. There were was kind of half and half. It was the girls' dorm, which will play into part here in a little bit. But so I moved in, no roommates, just me. I did have a suite mate for a little while, so I met my wife, this girl, at day one. But let's take it back a little bit even further. So growing up, I grew up in, of course, conservative South. I grew up in the I Kiss Dating Goodbye era, which those of you who know what that is would know that that's a book written by a guy named Joshua Harris, who, crazily enough, has actually walked away from the faith at this time. He's either agnostic. I don't think he's atheistic, but he denounced a lot of his Christian beliefs because of some church hurts, because of some leadership failings that he saw, and even I think he even felt like he had injured people through creating this kind of purity culture, this idea of like Christians shouldn't date, they shouldn't spend time with just them and a female. It was all group dates. It was like a book that was written. Now, that being said, I don't know that I particularly followed that. Just growing up, I wasn't shy. I just was very, very cautious, very reserved, and I didn't. I mean, it's really taken a lot for me in my life to. And this is going to sound weird if you think about the ways that I've lived my life, but it's like there are risks that I'm happy to take. For example, I will just pick up my stuff and just move somewhere. Right? I've done that. Or I would just go, hey, yeah, I'm just going to a different college than I thought I was going to 6 months before I'm going to do that. For some people, those are the risky things. For me, those are the easy things. And so for me, the risk of actually committing, asking, being brave enough to risk changing that relationship with someone of the opposite sex, a girl, has not always been the easiest thing for me to do. And also, I've just not always been, growing up, good at reading signs, and so some lack of confidence in that too. So yeah, I did not date very much when I was in high school. I had my first girlfriend. I was a freshman. She was a junior. She was the Church of Christ pastor's daughter, and I was not the Church of Christ. And I was a little bit young. I was a freshman. She could drive. I could not. And we dated for about 3 weeks, and then her dad made us break up. He didn't make us break up. He made her break up with me. That was she was my first love, and my first broken heart. And it wasn't really anything that either one of us had done. It wasn't that we fell out of love. It's just like her dad said no, and I think I dated one other person. It wasn't that I wasn't interested, but I will say it was not. I didn't live very social in my high school years. I was very busy. I played all the sports. My dad was a coach. I played all the sports. I was also big academics, so I did lots of stuff. So I love spending time with my family. We would go hunting. We would go fishing. We would hang out. I just didn't spend a whole lot of time. I lived kind of out in the country, so I didn't spend a whole lot of time with other people, unlike some of my friends that who lived in the city, who were a little bit more used to spending time. Now, as I got to junior, senior year, obviously I had my own car or pickup truck, but either way, I would spend more time being social. But for a lot of it, I just wasn't. And I had those, and I had girls that I liked. I had crushes. I had summer camp girls that we exchanged addresses and promised to write because we were just so in love. Because that's of course the best place to meet somebody is at summer camp. Intense emotions, all that kind of good stuff. So I had all that, but it just wasn't something that was like a major focus in my life, which I guess you could tell because I got to 25 without being married or even really dating somebody for longer than a month. So, yeah. In college, in college I probably missed a whole bunch of signs that girls were giving me. I probably broke a few hearts because I was hung out with people, but I just never asked to take the relationship further. In fact, I know that there were some girls that one wrote me a letter about how I stopped talking to her. But in my defense, I don't have one. So yeah, it just wasn't something that. It's not something I was against. There were girls I found interesting and attractive, but I just had a hard time stepping beyond the basic, hey, let's be more than friends kind of conversation. I just wasn't one that I was used to having, wasn't one that I was good at, and it was risky. And I think, like I said, I would do lots of things. I can get up and stand, talk in front of people. I can play my guitar and sing in front of people. But it was one of those risks that I emotionally and relationally I just didn't take a whole lot. So yeah, so that's kind of the long run back history of my prior relationship status. So here I am, 25, starting first day of seminary to meet this girl, and I didn't really think anything of it. I There was actually another girl that I was talking to at the time, and so I wasn't even, yeah, I was but again, not very good at having those conversations. I probably missed some signals in that one too, and probably, you know, unfortunately, left things unsaid, but God works things out, and so enough dwelling on that. So yeah, so it started at school. Callie and I actually ended up being in the same classes together, and one of the things that we had to do is we had to register for a education website called Blackboard, and I had one when I was at Angelo State, but that was 3 years before, because I took 3 years off before I went to seminary, and so I was like, I wonder if my old email address is still the same one that I can get onto Blackboard with, and it was not. But I tried putting it in a couple of times, and in that time, unbeknownst to me, Callie leaned over and looked at my screen and memorized my email address. This is where I like to tell the story that I was stalked, and that is what happened. You can call it whatever you want. Callie does not call it that. She calls it research. But either way, she memorized my email address, went home, emailed me, and said, "Hey, we're in all the same classes. Here's my phone number and email, just in case you ever have any questions, or if I have questions, or if we miss class." And I was like, "Oh, okay, cool, whatever." So we hung out for a little bit. We started, well, I was like, hey, well, let's just meet and just talk. I guess I didn't really know her. I was like, say, other than having this advisor's coffee, didn't really know her. So I was like, hey, yeah, let's just go have lunch or something. Really, I wasn't, again, not really thinking relationship things, just, okay, cool, you're a person, and let's get to know you. So we did that, and I think the kicking off point for sure was I was working as a teacher's assistant for one of the professors, and his secretary needed to be moved, and so they needed volunteers to do that. So I volunteered, and so did Callie, and we got to serve together. The professor who invited us to coffee together also was there. Well, actually, a different professor, but was there to. And we were just moving stuff. I mean, we were just moving boxes and all kinds of stuff, and that really kind of kicked things off, like interest-wise. And so I asked her out on a date. It was Labor Day, and we were going to go get some barbecue at this great barbecue place in Abilene called Joe Allen's. They're closed on Monday. And so we went to a Chinese food restaurant, and it was the first date. So I guess if you're looking for hints, if you can survive going to a Chinese food buffet on your first date, then that's pretty good. But yeah, we met on Labor Day. Not Labor Day. We went on our first date Labor Day. I had bought a ring by Halloween, probably sooner than that, and then we were engaged by November, Thanksgiving. Got engaged on Thanksgiving Day, as a matter of fact. But we had talked about it before that. So for those keeping score at home, we definitely we met and got engaged within 3 months. And I mean, it has been now. So we got married in 2006. So it has been. We're headed into we're in year 18 right now. So that doesn't mean that everybody should do that. But for us, it worked. For us, we went in knowing that we knowing that we both were committed to something, that we weren't going to get, that divorce was not an option. We went in. So yeah, it doesn't mean there weren't bumps along the way, even before the process. So when I asked Callie the day before Thanksgiving, I asked Callie's parents' blessing. Again, this is probably semantics here, but I asked for the blessing, not permission. We were both 25. We'd both lived 3 years. We'd both lived outside of the homes, so it's not like we were underneath our parents' real influence any longer. And so I said, "Hey, I would like your blessing," and Callie's parents said no. And so Callie and I drove back to my parents' house that night after hearing that. It was an hour drive, and we just tried to figure out what to do. Because if we were going to wait on her parents to get around this idea to say yes, it felt like they were then in control of whatever that we were going to do. And as, like I say, being adults and being our own people, we were like, that's not really what we want to do. And so the next morning, I asked her to marry me against her parents' wishes. And then then it was just kind of a continual snowball until we got married, of them kind of coming to acceptance. But it was rough. It was, the funniest story, I guess maybe not funny, but funny now looking back on it, again, 18 years ago or more. They wanted to meet my parents, and so we met for a meal, and Callie's dad, who's a very upfront, gruff kind of individual, said, first thing, so we sat down and introduced my parents to her parents, and he goes, "Well, I'm not in favor of this." And this is, now we're talking in December, so we're already a month into planning and all those kind of things, and nobody really knew what to say. We just kind of said, okay, and moving on. So we got engaged, and then we got married in May of that following year. So for those keeping score at home, we got engaged within 3 months, and we got married 5 months later, 6 months later. So we didn't even know each other for a year, and we were married. And it's a pretty amazing thing, because I don't believe that God sets aside just one person for you, that like, there's this soulmate, as they would say, that there's this sock that matches up. I don't believe that is what happens. What I believe, and I haven't fully fleshed this out, so I apologize if this offends anybody's theology, or if this is not a fully fleshed out theology. What I believe is that God calls people who cross paths, and they are called to serve, and serve one another, and to serve Him. And we were both committed to that. We were both committed to serving one another, and we were both committed to serving God. And we were both committed to making our relationship work. Our relationship. It's crazy for me, because growing up, I lived in a very stable home. I didn't ever really see my parents fight. They didn't have like the violent yelling and screaming or anything like that. I'm sure they had their moments. I just was oblivious to it, ambivalent. I just didn't see it, and so I remember going to visit my parents, and we were going to Sunday school. My dad still teaches Sunday school to this day, so he's been a Sunday school teacher since forever, and he still teaches to this day. So we went to a Sunday school, and they were on marriage, and he was just like, "Yeah, marriage is hard." And I was just like, where? When? What are you talking about? And it was kind of this wake up. And it was in between the time that I had gotten engaged and before I got married. And it was like, what? Marriage is hard? And it was just a reminder. It's just a kind of this point to go, the relationship is about growing closer to God and supporting one another, encouraging one another in that. And as our relationship, as for marriage, we were both committed to doing that. We wanted to grow closer to God, and we wanted God to use our whole marriage. We wanted to everything we did was just to honor Him, and it's amazing to think back now. I mean, who knew? I did not know. I'm sure Callie didn't know that what we would do and where all we would go and how that would work. And yet God has used our relationship to bless and minister, and He's used it to bless me. He's blessed me with a wonderful woman who puts up with me and who looks after me and cares for me and prays for me and walks beside me and is willing. And just to kind of give you the, like, this is crazy kind of aspect to what it means to be married to me is that, so just as we got married, so again, we both are finishing our first year of seminary. I get a job as a youth minister in a little town called Robert Lee, Texas, and it has one stoplight, and it's about an hour and 10 minutes away from Abilene, and so we have to commute in for our classes, but that's okay because we can take classes only on Tuesdays and Thursdays, so it's only 2 days out of the week, and I'm working full-time doing youth ministry, and so we move. So we do all of the life changes all together because why not, right? So we're going to school, which is a big one. So going to school for graduate school. We get married. That's a huge one. We move. That's a big one. I start a new job. Again, as I got married, I started a new job. She came along with me to Robert Lee to hang out, and didn't know what she got herself in there. And so we moved into just as I was, again, man, this is crazy. So many crazy things. Just as I was accepting the job, and I needed a job because I was getting married, and when you get married, you're expected to pay for things and provide and that kind of stuff. And so as I was applying to be the youth minister at this place, I did the interview. The pastor comes to me and says, "Hey, just so you know, I'm leaving. I'm not going to be here at the church. This is my next Sunday. I'm going to announce it. I won't be here when you get here because we were finishing up our semester and getting married, and then we were moving, and so we had a couple of weeks after the interview, and I was like, okay, but again, for me." There was nothing else in my view, nothing else. I didn't have a backup plan. I wasn't like, oh, well, I could do this job or I could do another. It was like, no, this is the one, and God just kind of directed me to it. I was like, no, I'm in. I'm doing this one. And so, the pastor left, and so we moved into his old house kind of temporarily because there was no, temporary housing. There was no apartments or good apartments. There was no real places to rent. We weren't, poor college students weren't really looking to buy a house, and so we moved in there. Within a month, we were at camp. We were at Glorieta, New Mexico. The kids wanted to go to Glorieta. They decided that before we even got there, so we were there in June, and I got a phone call on my cell phone from the head of the deacons to tell me that the pastor had sold his house, and when we get back, we are going to have to move out. And it's like, well, okay, we don't have a place to live. And so the head of the deacons was a real estate guy. He goes, I'll tell you what, man, I'm buying this double wide kind of house thing, and you guys can rent from me. And I said, sounds good. And so for keeping score at home, we moved in the first month and being married, and then we moved in the second month of being married. Which is just fun. We were trying to figure out how to do life together. One of the things I would say about marriage is that it is some people believe that marriage, makes things easier, or it doesn't. If we just get married, it'll fix any problems we have in our relationship. And the truth is that marriage for us, some people don't have the same view, but for us as Christians, as believers, for Callie and I, we were like, marriage doesn't make things perfect, but it does make things permanent. Like, we were committed to that. We were not like, we're till death do you part is where we're at, till death do you part. And so one of the things that like marriage does is it just becomes a mirror that points back at you, and you don't realize as a person how selfish you are until you have to include a whole nother person's understanding into your life. You just don't realize it. And I mean, and I was a pretty selfless guy. I was a pretty I'll serve whatever I need to do. But being married just brought out like this further understanding, or revelation even, that I had so much more work to do, and I'm still working on that. And thankfully, God's blessed me with someone who's patient and kind, who prays, like I say, who prays for me, who cares for me, and helps me be a better me. And so I can't like that. That's amazing. That's more than I deserve, and she honors me more than I deserve in that. And so we got so the craziness doesn't really end there. Of course, we're doing youth ministry at this place, trying to make a difference in kids' lives, and having a good time. We're doing all this stuff. We go through a year of school. Well, we do a summer, we do a year of school, we do a second summer. And by that time, a couple of things happened. We had a new pastor who, oh man, he, pastors are people. And they have their own weaknesses and faults and struggles and strengths. And he was good, and for a lot of things. But one of the things that what became just so clear to me, he he and I clashed on some things, and one of them was just that I wanted to take the kids to do a youth to go up and do a youth mission trip up for the Presbyterian Church in Lake City and do their vacation Bible school. And he was like, "No, we can't do that." And I was like, "Why?" "Well, because the theological differences." And I was just like, "Well." And again, I was not good with confrontation at that time, and so I didn't even know what words to say. I was just heartbroken by it, because it was like, what theology do you think we're getting in with Vacation Bible School? Like Presbyterians, Baptists, we're all gonna end up on the same thing of like, Jesus died for my sins, and you need him to be your savior. And there's baptism. I realize in the Presbyterian Church there's things such as infant baptism, but that's a whole different story, and they were not going to be talking about. I mean, it just wasn't going to be a thing, right? It just wasn't going to be a thing. But he was like absolutely against it, and so that was like a thing that really just kind of put a downer on just serving there. He just had some weird interactions with my wife. She was doing children's ministry, and we were doing a meal for the kids, and every Wednesday night, they do a meal, and then they'd have kids church, and then youth after that, and there became some kind of discussion about, maybe we can change things around, and Kelly was like, I think we should keep the mill where it is, and the pastor was just like, well, I can do whatever I want to do. And that's probably where I was like, okay, I think we're gonna not be here anymore. And along with that, it ended up being that gas started being closer to $5 a gallon, and so driving back and forth from Abilene to Robert Lee twice a week, and we were going to have to do it 3 times a week, became more of a financial burden, and so we moved. We left. We moved back to Abilene. So in the first 2 years of being married, Callie and I moved 3 times. For those keeping score at home. And Callie got a job working for a home health care organization, and I did not get a job. I applied for some places I was looking for. I actually, crazy thing, God does those things. I actually applied for this bookstore, it was movies, books, CDs, called Hastings. It's only really in Texas, and there's only a few of them alive now. They've kind of all gone extinct. But I had applied, and I had also put my name in for this part-time job out of this little country church outside. And I got a call for an interview for Hastings, and the same week I got a call for an interview for the church. And so I had to say no to Hastings. Didn't even got... Like I had to call him and say, like, hey, I'm not going to come in for the interview. And I applied and went out, applied for this church, talked to this church, and they hired me. And so for a year, I did Sunday mornings, Sunday nights, and Wednesday night Bible studies, preaching on Sunday morning. At this little church that we probably never had more than 20 people in there at a time. And it was a good time. I mean, it was hard. While I was there at that church, I preached my first sermon for a funeral. And it was for a guy who, he was a deacon in the church, and he was suffering. He was probably 80 years old, and he had COPD, and he couldn't breathe. And so one day he just decided he had had enough. And his wife was suffering dementia, Alzheimer's, and he sent her out to take care of the chickens. And then he ended things. And that was one of the first funerals I ever preached at. And the thing that I took from that, the thing that I was able to grasp and learn, was just that it was this opportunity to minister to the people. And we talked a whole lot about his life, and not any about his death. But we talked a whole about his life and how he served and the things he was known for and the things that brought joy. And we got to celebrate his life because, that's who he was. He wasn't, at the end, that's not who he was. He was that guy that brought joy and had ministered. It was such a crazy time. He would I'd go to church. We'd have our Wednesday night meal, and I'd say, "Hey, buddy, how you doing?" He goes, "Man, I just prayed today that God would take me." I said, "God, why don't you just take me?" And what do you say to that? What do you say to that? I don't know. I just said, I'm praying for you. So I was a pastor, finishing up seminary. And Callie was doing her pastor's wife thing, trying to be supportive. She was working on her own job as well, and we were going to school, finishing up school, and it was good. It was good. We enjoyed being married. We enjoyed each other. We enjoyed hanging out. We enjoyed school. I enjoyed school much more than she did. But life was good. Even though we had some crazy times and moving here and there, life was good. It was gonna get crazier. I'm gonna leave you on that cliffhanger there, because one of the most zigzags that my life has taken one that's the hardest to explain, I think, sometimes to people. But one that was clear to me is coming up. And we'll do that next week. But I'll leave you with that cliffhanger. If you haven't got the sense yet, and I want to just say it again, I am blessed beyond all measure to have the wife that God allows me to have. It is hard work to be married, and it takes working on yourself and your spouse working on herself and himself or whoever, but also just working together. And it is hard work. And love is a feeling, and and it's an emotion, and that kind of ebbs and flows, just like with all kinds of emotion. If you go into life thinking you're always just gonna feel like you're in love with somebody, it's just not going to be it's not reality. And that's why I think when God talks about love, he talks about that it's action. For God so loved the world that he gave his only son. There's no love greater than this than for a man to lay down his life for his brothers. So when God talks about love, he talks about the choice, the choosing to act, the choosing to serve, the choosing of the activity. And it's not about the feeling. It's not about the emotion. The reality is that God loves us, and so he acts upon that love, and that's how we know he loves us. And it's not because he has some emotion, but that he is this love, and because he is this love, he always chooses to act lovingly. And when you want to think about, hey, you want to marry somebody, you want to be in a relationship with someone, you're going to have emotions, and that's good. Having those emotions is fine, but you have to realize that love is a verb, and it is a choice. I will choose to love because of what I do, not because of what I feel. And you can feel very dry and empty and still choose to love someone. You may not have the emotion for it, but you still have the ability to choose and act on that. And that's what love is. And that's what marriage is built on. It's built on that mutual submission and choice to say, I am going to love that person, not just by the things that I say, or the things that I think, or the emotions I feel, but the very things that I choose to do. And if you want to stay married a long time, then you've got to realize that early, because marriage is hard. It takes work. But your job, if you're going to follow Christ, as Christ says to follow him, is to love. And that means to choose to love and to act in love. And so that's the challenge. So hopefully that brought you some insight and some joy, a little bit ups and downs, topsy-turvy of my life. And yeah, hopefully you'll meditate on what it means to love. Read 1 Corinthians chapter 13, the love chapter. It spells it out even better. But yeah, just take that as an advice of an old married man, that it's all about choosing to love and not just feeling love. Hope you have a blessed week. Hope that God teaches you something each day. And I hope that have you come back and hear and be with you again next week.